19th for the first 2025. The time is 5 minutes past 8, and there are very many F1 centric news threads at which we need to pull. It's Lando Norris, the £3 million F40 crash. Oh, the humanity is Ferrari announcement, them getting cryptic as ever about 1644, which is of course the symbiosis between Charles Leclerc, aka modern day Jean Alesi's number, and the one they call Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. We'll talk too about Maximilian Verstappen. There was a crash that I neglected to talk about earlier on as far as his bloody sim racing career. What does it mean? Is this variable change? Everybody says that the trend is your friend until there's a bend. So too, we'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen and Helmut Marko in and amongst all the rancor and speculation back and forth at the team that is the Bulls that were red last season. There is rumour and reports saying that Maximilian Verstappen was wholly responsible for keeping Helmut Marko in play as a Red Bull GmbH consultant. Oh, the humanity. It will get techie. Turtle, you guys are legends up here all late at night, 3 a.m. What are we doing here? Go on then, without further ado, let's talk about some F1-age. Because Lando Norris's car has been in an incident. For the avoidance of doubt, please see Exhibit A.
Ma chi è? Lando Norris. Ciao Lando.
Ciao Lando. So that's the man in question, yeah, and that's his F40. Not a cheap car in 2025 terms. Some say anywhere between £3 and £4 million, ladies and gentlemen. Not a bad car. He's made some modifications for the discerning eye amongst you. Different alloys. You'll recall as well, the red says 80 something 6Q, and here you have footage of the same car. This, ladies and gentlemen, is your Exhibit B. Oof. Snap oversteer any. You'll recognise the alloys and the registration. Oh, the humanity. Please see registration for details. Oh, the humanity. Lando Norris's F40, £3 million car in the barrier. What are we doing here? But again, for the avoidance of doubt, does that look like Lando Norris to you in that car? Or does that look like Lando Norris's dad, the owner of the business, the sponsor of Lando No Wins? Oh, the humanity. It gets techier and techier as we go into 2025, for there are still a very many F1 centric threads at which we need to pull. Check this out from Ferrari as well. What do you think about this, chat? I don't know what to make of it. Half of me cringes. Some of me is allergic to this very unique brand of social media. And it's not as if Scuderia Ferrari, now sponsored as their title sponsor by HP, it feels like they're milking this now for every ounce of social media juice that they can. 1644, what does that mean? Is something going to happen at 1644 Italian Central European time tomorrow? 344 GMT? Who the fudge knows? I feel like I'm getting a little bit sick of all this nonsense, you know, from Scuderia Ferrari. I know they're looking to catapult the brand into new levels in 25. I understand all this, but spare me. Do you know what I mean? Spare me something else here, Scuderia. And we know it's going to be gangbusters. The press and media will be circulating. This is the first week of Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton's tenure at Ferrari. Maybe we get a cheeky picture of Lewis and modern day Jean Alesi in the red overalls with the yellow badge, atop of which will be a black prancing horse, and that's got to be gangbusters. You guys have heard me envisioning this picture for the longest time. It's different, isn't it, as far as Sir Lewis's move, potentially per Jacques Villeneuve, the biggest move transfer in F1, in F1's history. And I don't disagree with it in that sense, but the pictures will hit different. Seeing them somehow makes it more real than it was before. It will get techie. Oh, and by the way, new pictures and audio visuals of Maximilian Verstappen. We talked about it before, that he had a cheeky incident, the second in 2 weeks in a sim race overnight. But there was another incident very similar. Let's take a look at it as your exhibit C. Oof. Oh, Max. And he's not happy, is he? You can see Matt's bottom left, eh?
He do the same mistake.
He's done exactly the same thing.
That wheel is not surviving.
Owen, thank you for the tier one. When you finish the race, you're like, oh, that one's going to be replayed back. Like, people are always going to remember that race.
It's probably something for later as well, right? When I stop driving to look back at and
Oh, sorry.
to look back at and yeah, enjoy it for sure.
Go on then. So of that incident, I will say this. No, Max isn't washed. It was only a couple of days ago when he was nailing Brazil, one of the most generational, exceptional drives that I've ever seen in F1 history, reminiscent of a similar drive around the same track in 2016, reminiscent of Donington 1993, Ayrton Senna, Schumacher in Spain, all of those ones. So, of course, the trend is your friend until there's a bend. What do you mean by that, Cameron? What I mean by that is Max has been flawless for the past 24 months, and then Abu Dhabi, there was a mistake. A couple of weekends ago in the bloody sim race, IMSA, there was a mistake, and now we get two mistakes in the same sim race, in inverted commas, from Maximilian Verstappen, four soon to be five-time champion. Max Verstappen fundamentalists will say, Cameron, you're no longer a fan, go across to British bias, but we're just judging the thing in real time. To say anything else not dissimilar to the Lewis Hamilton analysis would be to do Max Verstappen a disservice. He barely makes any mistakes ever. And so this, over the past couple of weeks from him, of course he's still human, but this is uncharacteristic from Max Verstappen, for some say soon to be five-time champion. Oh, and by the way, you heard him talking about this will be fun to look back after my career is closed, after all is said and done, full stop, new paragraph. Max Verstappen, for the avoidance of doubt, has never been hesitant to talk about the end of his career. You'll recall last season when they asked him on completing 200 races whether he would complete another 200, his response came back abrupt, curt, matter of fact, no, full stop, new paragraph, nothing else needs saying. He doesn't plan to be a Lewis Hamilton or Fernando Alonso, F1 geriatric settings, competing in an F1 car at 40 years old or more. Therefore, he will not do another 200 races. So you shouldn't be shocked when you hear Max Verstappen talk about it will be a fun one to look back on once all is said and done in my career. Do I parlay this into Max Verstappen thinking about retirement as at January of 2025? Absolutely not. But Max isn't here for a long time. He's here for a good time. So I don't think that conversation will ever go away. Father of Max Verstappen always talks about the potential for a sabbatical, using this as a negotiation tool with the bulls that are red. Build my son, my boy a car, or else he could go somewhere else. Aston Martin, maybe 1 billion contract. And again, this sort of money, when it's banded out, you've got to take it seriously. I understand the F1 word on a curb, conjecture and speculation. Mail on sports. Do you know what I mean? All F1 publications are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. I get it. I understand it. But 1 billion over the course of Max Verstappen's career between now and whenever he retires, you've got to take that stuff seriously. Max, not saying that Max is a different person, but he's going through changes, becoming Max Verstappen at 27 years old. Can you imagine? 4-time champion Sebastian Vettel, Alain Prost settings, Fangio, etc., etc. 27 years old though. Just now got himself a dog, about to have his firstborn. These are changes that are happening to the man in real time. Yes, his perspective on life and racing will be different. And if Red Bull fail to build him a car capable of running races and therefore championships, you bet your bottom dollar he will push that red button and go across to Lawrence Stroll's team, or potentially Mercedes. And this chat is where it gets techier than techie things as far as Mercedes, because I read a report today saying as follows, that Max Verstappen, courtesy of Motorsport Italy, is acutely aware that Mercedes, as far as expediting for their power units learning curve, are ahead of the rest. That this is looking and smelling and feeling a lot like 2014, when Mercedes had the whip hand on the rest by dint of their durable competitive advantage as far as their power unit. This was split turbo hybrid settings. Anywhere between 30 to 40 brake horsepower is their advantage, their delta that they had on the rest. And they carried this forth from 2014. It led and yielded to 8 Constructors' Championship back to back to back to back. And Max Verstappen is worried now, since he's in a Red Bull, that his reign as World Drivers' Championship will fall at the feet of this Mercedes, the boys and girls from Brackley's durable competitive advantage in 2026, by dint of their having nailed themselves some power unit settings. Word on the F1 curb, of course, and speculation, but it would make sense. If it's engine, power unit settings, hybridization, of course it's Ferrari and of course it's Mercedes, over and above Red Bull in conjunction with Ford. Ford? What? No chance. No chance. If there is power in a name, then Ford has none of it. It will get techie for Red Bull and Maximilian Verstappen in 2026 when these new rules and regs kick in. Oh, and by the way, if we're talking about the ever-evolving Rubik's Cube that is the roundabout at the balls that are red, Helmut Marko, there's a report out today that talks about the chaos that ensued there last season. Helmut Marko said as follows. He says, I've known the Verstappens for quite some time now, and the Verstappens are very special. That's clear. And one thing that's for sure is that they are very loyal. You can count on them. Now, the pretext for this, per the article on Planet F1, is that Helmut Marko was once upon a time in last season on the chopping block. Why? Well, because word on the F1 curb was that he was responsible somehow for the leak that happened around misconduct. So too, you'll recall that all those journalists got the bloody Christian Horner text messages between him and the alleged victim, didn't they? Who was responsible for that? If not somebody in the Verstappen camp, not Max, Jos potentially, or potentially Helmut Marko. We know too that Max Verstappen's contract at the time featured something called a Helmut Marko clause. Since that has faded to black because Helmut Marko's extended, and that contract clause that would have enabled Maximilian Verstappen to null and void his contract in real time should Helmut Marko, Red Bull GmbH consultant, have left. That's now gonzo. However, we know that there are other performance clauses in Maximilian Verstappen's contract. Let's say, as at Suzuka, race 3, let's hypothesize that Max Verstappen is in 4th place or lower in the driver's standing. You don't think for a second that Max Verstappen will have a clause in his contract that allows him to null and void his contract with the balls that are red with immediate effect in that eventuality. I'm telling you, they have always, Team Verstappen I'm talking about here, they have always leveraged that. So scared and paranoid is father of Max, Jos, around his son's career, potentially falling foul of the same travails and foibles that his did. Poor contract negotiations, alongside Michael Schumacher. How was that ever going to work out well for Jos Verstappen? It was never. Marko continues, referring to a particular statement from Max Verstappen during the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where he asserted that there would be no future for him at Red Bull Racing without Helmut Marko. That's Max Verstappen talking there. He knows how instrumental Helmut Marko was in getting him his start out at Toro Rosso. Helmut Marko says, and I quote, "For me, of course, those words for Max were very nice. He's one of the greatest sportsmen in the world, earns a lot of money, but above all, sticks to his principles. That hasn't changed since he was 14 years old. Did Max save me then? Well, there were some more things at play as far as my role, but that is all nice to hear from the 4 soon-to-be 5-time champion." Ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, it gets techier and techier by the day. This week upcoming will be critical to see how Scuderia's Ferrari start moving. Imagine, again, in less than 48 hours, we could see the first pictures of Sir Lewis Hamilton in their red overalls atop the yellow badge, which have in turn the black prancing horse atop of it. Oh, the humanity.